let's go ahead and get started, because today
Okay.
we have a really fascinating speaker, somebody that I have known for many, many years, and I've been dying to get on one of these webcasts. And the reality is that he and I spoke on many, many panels over the years on sustainability. For a while, it was almost kind of a joke, like, oh, you're here too. So, so it really is a pleasure having Richard Young join us. Let me just do a quick introduction. And I have a short little bio of him here, so everybody knows who he is. Because today we're gonna not talk so much about food. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna come in there. We're not going to talk about waste directly. We're going to talk about food service equipment and what that means for us from an energy, water standpoint, etc. And Richard is absolutely one of the foremost experts in this. So Richard is the director at the Frontier Energy Food Service Technology Center. We got to do something about that name. Uh,
And
which is an
it's too long.
unbiased commercial food service research and training facility, known for many of us in the industry as Fishnick. So Richard is a trained electrical engineer, and he started his career in alternative energy, and then changed from energy generation to energy efficiency when he joined the Food Service Technology Center research team over 30 years ago. He's a contributor to the U.S. Green Building Leadership Council's Leadership in Energy, which is LEAD, basically. He has worked for the EPA and the Energy Star program in the United States, which looks at equipment about which is the best and most energy efficient. He's lectured at University of California, Berkeley, and University of California, Davis. He's taught sustainability classes at local community colleges. He was on the National Restaurant Association's Conserve Advisory Council, along with me many moons ago, and that's here in the United States, and was part and is a past fellow of the Hobart Center for Food Service Sustainability. So we're going to get into everything that he does, but Richard has spoken at over 1,000 different venues, written lots of articles. I mean, truly, he is one of the great experts globally in everything to do with energy, water, and food service equipment. So, Richard, what an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today.
Great. Thank you.
Wide awake.
And Chris, one nice thing about this is we have a captive audience. And I remember the time that you and I had a sustainability session in one room, and next door to us there was the tequila tasting session. And and we kind of lost to the tequila tasting, but today
We
we have
did,
we
although if you remember, I went next door and bummed a bottle of tequila
yeah,
off of that person, and
right.
we stood outside falsely advertising tequila shots in our section.
Exactly.
Yeah, you do what you gotta do. But
You do
yes,
what you got to do. Yes,
that's
that's
exactly
exactly
right.
right.
So let's just jump right in, because I have a lot of
Okay.
questions for you. And I guess the first is, and I sort of introduced the Food Service Technologies Center, but can you tell us a little bit more about it and why it's valuable for us chefs? Why is it such a resource?
Yeah. And, the thing that we say about the Food Service Technology Center is that we study all the ways that commercial food service uses energy and water. And commercial food service is huge, right? It's a massive industry. And for chefs, sort of when we're teaching at culinary schools and talking to community college students, one of the very first things that we try to implore to these young culinarians is that energy and water are ingredients in all of your recipes. You tend to think it's tomatoes and rice and flour and all this stuff, but that cup of coffee you're drinking would be crap without energy and water. In fact, those are the two primary ingredients in that cup of coffee, right? And so we try to get people to think of energy and water as commodities and treat it in the same way that you would treat the coffee beans that you're buying and grinding. It's a part of your mix. And when you start looking at energy and water as a commodity, then it makes a lot of sense to really pay attention to that commodity. How much am I buying? How much am I wasting? And so at the Food Service Technology Center, we're the engineer nerds, the lab heads who look at where your ingredients are going, your energy and water, and try to help you waste less of it, because food service is an industry that wastes a lot of energy and water. And so that's essentially why we're important to you. We're bringing numbers to your recipe that you might not have thought about before.
I
Help me.
love that sort of rethinking it, because when we think about a recipe, I mean,
Mhm.
you see the food ingredients and then what you do with them, right? And we know that each one of those food ingredients costs us something.
Yeah.
And yet, to your point, we don't have, 8 liters of water, to run the steamer, and we don't have,
Mhm.
X amount of energy going into whatever. But you're
Mhm.
right, that's all money.
It's
It's
all
so
money.
so
Yeah.
so let's talk about, the equipment we purchase, right? Because we buy a
Mhm.
lot of different things. Um, I mean, there are differences, obviously, but how
Mhm.
big are these differences? I mean, is this like in other words, we're busy, chefs are busy. How much time should we really be spending, looking at what we
Yeah.
buy from a,
Yeah.
efficiency standpoint?
Well, you should spend a lot of time in the same way that I learned from reading Anthony Bourdain that a really good sharp chef knife is super important, and that you have to get one. And, there's nobody on this line that doesn't guard their knives and, feel like that's a primary tool. And then you walk into a kitchen, which really hasn't evolved much since the 1950s, and in many ways is fairly wasteful and can be hard to control, right? A lot of this older equipment is hard to really keep precise temperatures. You're running around fiddling with everything. And then we're talking about pieces of equipment that, if you had to sort of make an equivalent, like an analogy, I'd say that a lot of the equipment in most kitchens today kind of matches up to, like a late 1950s pickup truck. It's, it's tough and it starts most days, but it's not terribly safe and it wastes a lot of fuel. And so pivoting towards more efficient equipment, A, it saves you money, but B, it gives you more precision and more control over your kitchen and can help with your labor issues. One thing we were trying to help people with before the pandemic hit was, in the US at least, the labor is a massive issue. How do we even get people in the kitchen? you know so in the same way that you really pay attention to that knife and you understand how, a good sharp knife helps you produce more food and do it, with more precision and better, really good equipment can do the same thing. And I used to have this little teaching lesson. It's a game that I would put into my classes for culinary students, and it references the movie Chef. And Chris, I bet you saw the movie Chef. Do you remember this, where the guy goes and gets the food truck? And it's
Yeah,
Hollywood, right? But
yeah,
but there's a moment in the movie where the chef takes his son to go buy some equipment, and he walks by the fryers and he basically looks at two fryers and goes, yeah, they're the same. I'll take this one, just like the cheap. I'll take the cheap one, right? He doesn't say that in the movie, but I know that's what he's thinking. He's just looking at price. I'll take the cheap one. And then he gets to checkout, and he goes and has this long spiel. He buys his son a knife, and he has this long spiel about protect this knife forever, and et cetera, et cetera. Right. So in my exercise for the culinary students, I would say the chef spends a lot of time on that knife. He's really about that knife, but he spent no time on the fryer. Okay. If he had spent a little more time on the fryer and maybe spent a little more money, got the rebate, got the just the next level up, how many chef knives could he have bought from the energy savings 5 years later? And have everybody guess, and it's like they're all thinking, oh, it's 2 knives, it's 5 knives. It's like 130 chef knives, that he could buy 5 years later with just the energy savings. So the point being that, yes, there's a big bandwidth in performance. And if you go for the high performance equipment, you cut your cost to operate, you cut your energy bill, which puts money in your pocket, but you also produce more food. So
that's
yeah,
really
it's
interesting.
yeah.
So there's so a couple of things you just said. I want to sort of just dial back to for a second. 1950s, really. I mean, is that really where we are in terms of food service equipment?
Yeah. Have you looked at a gas range top lately? They are, I mean, they're last a million years, tough as hell. but it's basically just a chunk of metal with some, a few valves in it. It really hasn't changed much. I mean, really, gas range tops are kind of 19th century. Another thing that we like to point out is one of the more popular convection ovens that people buy. The spec has not changed since the 1960s. And we know that
Wow.
because we took an old version of this oven out of a bakery on my street. It was just, kind of falling apart in the bakery. And they were like, we're going to get a new oven. And I go, let us have that old one. And we looked it up. It was made in 1964. And we took it into the lab. We ran what we call an idle rate test on it, just to see generally how much energy it's wasting, and compared that to a brand new version of the same oven. And the new oven and the 1964 oven perform the same. It's
Unbelievable.
yeah, it's kind of like I
So,
say, it's kind of like a 1950s or 1960s pickup truck.
so Richard, one of the things, and I'm going just random questions here, but I remember back in the day when we were speaking, you would talk about how much energy is actually wasted on a gas range.
Yeah,
What is that
yeah.
statistic?
On a really good day, you can probably get about 40% efficiency. So if you bought $1 worth of energy and you put it into the gas range, 40 cents would make it into the soup that you're heating up there, make it into the food. But that's really at the high end. That's like on the perfect day with no wind in the lab. the, the
Unbelievable.
the normal efficiency is more like 35%, and then in the field it's probably 25%, and then when you figure all the times that the burners are on and nothing's on them, maybe it's down to 20 or 15%. So let's say it's 25%. So I bought $1 worth of energy, 25 cents went into the food that I could sell, did some useful work for me, and the other 75 cents was gone.
But
Right.
that's a crazy equation, because I don't think it's
Yeah.
something we always think about. But that would be like buying, I don't know, a case of apples, and
Yeah.
then as soon as it comes in your back door, you throw out 3/4 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
As a chef, that would be like unthinkable, and yet every day we use gas ranges. And so let me
Yeah.
ask you, so chefs are busy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep going back to this, because one of the things that is I mean, maybe there's a little more time in COVID era, but we're going to come out of this someday,
Yep.
and chefs will be busy again, and many of them still are. But the point is, how do you know, right? I mean, if I look at my kitchen and I
Mhm.
say there's a lot of different pieces of equipment here, where should I be focusing my energy?
Mhm.
And how do I know? How do I learn about this stuff?
Yeah, and I'd say there's a couple of ways, and I would also I don't want to imply that the entire industry is in the Stone Age, because there are pieces of equipment that are highly evolved. So when I'm talking about some of these pieces of equipment, if you just go down and build your typical equipment, that's your 1950s equipment. Um, but you ask a really good question. How do you learn this stuff? Because it's not necessarily being taught in all culinary schools. It's not necessarily front page on culinary magazines. There's a handful of people, primarily within our little facility in California, that really understand this stuff. And we do everything we can to share the information. So one way you can get a lot of information is from the California Energy Wise website, because we do free classes that anybody can stream from anywhere in the world. And that website, and Lynn, I suppose we will share this after the fact. It's
Yes, we will. Yes.
caenergywise.com. So that's a great way to do it. And the other thing you get if you go to that website is you will find out about rebates, right? The California rebates, which you can essentially use as a shopping list, regardless of where you are in the world. You can pull up this spreadsheet and see all the efficient equipment. Energy Star would be another way. The Energy Star program, which is something that came out of our research facility, is a way. If you see a piece of equipment with the Energy Star label, that go for it. It means it's a good deal. And then the other thing is, if you're just trying to get some basic information on all of this stuff we're talking about, um, we put together a program that we called Food Service Energy Efficiency Expert, which is FE3 for short. And that's sort of your primer on this. That steps you through, why do I care? What are some of the pieces of equipment? But it's our personal goal to try and produce more information and get this information out to the culinary world, because it makes such a difference. And the it's time for us to pivot. We're in a revolutionary period in our commercial kitchens right now, and I think everybody's got to really start thinking about the next thing. It's
So,
off-premises dining and it's efficiency, it's cutting carbon, all this stuff. We got to do it.
so this is, by the way, these courses, the FE3,
Mhm.
I would highly recommend, especially maybe for some of you who have a little downtime right now,
Yeah.
because again, as chefs, I always find it kind of amazing. We spend so much time focusing on food, I mean, obviously, and how we cook it and all of that. But how much time do we really spend looking at what we cook it on and the
Mhm.
piece of equipment that we use in our kitchen? So, Richard, a couple really fast questions. We're going to try to, and then we're going to try to get to some questions. I see a couple
Mhm.
coming in here. Um, so, what do you recommend? Is it gas, electric, induction, charcoal? where, where, where do if you were gonna suggest, like, I want to buy a new piece of equipment, what should I be thinking about?
Yeah, and it really depends on your situation, where you are. We say that we are fuel agnostic, which means we don't really care what kind of fuel you use, but we have a mission, and that mission is to cut carbon. We want you to do your job, cook your food using emitting as little carbon as possible. So the choice between gas and electricity, in some ways that depends on where you are, because if you're in a place where your electricity is coming from coal-fired power plants, but you have the option for natural gas, gas would be the lower carbon fuel. It's not super easy. Out here in California, we have a lot of renewable energy. We have a pretty clean electricity mix. And so there's a big push towards electrification, and which I think works really well for your institutional kitchens, your school districts, um, for all the high
Hotels?
tech. What's that?
For hotels?
Hotels, all the high end, B&I stuff we're doing, the Googles and LinkedIn's and Apples of the world, all these folks who are not living and dying based on their 3% profit every day. I think going towards electric kitchens makes a lot of sense because municipalities, the laws, the codes are all moving in that direction, and ultimately it's going to help you with your corporate sustainability goals. Your corporation, if you work for a hotel chain, at some point they're going to throw up the flag and say we're going to go zero carbon. Walmart just did it, we're going zero carbon. So you're setting yourself up.
Got it.
But if you are fine dining, if you're a chef-owned restaurant, then if you came and talked to me, I'm going to try and find you the lowest operating cost with the lowest carbon. And that might mean you have some gas appliances in your facility, particularly the bigger ones. If you got a rack oven, big pizza oven, something like that, then gas is your lowest cost operating mode. And if you get an efficient piece of equipment, then I can get you pretty low cost and relatively low carbon.
So, how efficient is induction?
Induction is very efficient. So for range tops, I would say for pretty much anybody, go for the induction. If you can, even if you're a small time operator, an independent operator, if you can raise that extra, capital to get the induction cooktop, do it, because the induction cooktops are running, 85% efficient. So now I'm
Wow.
buying a dollar's worth of energy and 85 cents are making it into the food. And then the other thing is when I take the pot off the induction, it turns off. So I'm not wasting any energy when I'm not cooking. And at the end of the day, I wipe the top down. That's my labor. I'm not taking burners out and crumb pans and all this kind of stuff. I don't have to worry about, the flames that are this tall. Somebody's drilled the burners, or the orifice is clogged, or
Interesting.
it's a very controllable, labor-saving piece of equipment, and I think that it's a tool that some chefs, on this call probably are like, of course I use induction, it's the best ever, and some chefs have maybe never touched it, and all they know is
Yeah.
resistance electric, which is not very cool,
Well,
but
and
induction is cool.
induction clearly is more expensive, initially. But I think one of
Yeah.
the things that we talked about in the sustainability course
Mhm.
was this whole concept of, long-term, short-term thinking.
Yeah.
Short-term thinking many times does not actually help us from a sustainability standpoint, where long-term thinking says, I
Mhm.
spend a little more now, but I'm going to be way more efficient in the future, which actually then, brings money back.
Absolutely.
So Richard, you are totally keyed into what's happening in the equipment world, and this is one of those crazy questions. Is there anything out there that you're kind of watching that you're like, I think the market is moving that way, and something is coming down the pike? It might be a few years out, but watch it, because I think it's going to be exciting. Anything going on?
The food service industry tends to move forward a step at a time, right? It's sort of small evolutionary steps, and we continue to look at combination ovens and just go, wow, because every new iteration that comes in has a few more controls, a little bit more smart logic in it, And when people will go to conferences and they'll be like, robotics are the big thing, and then you stand back and you realize the robotics aren't happening. And I go, well, you've already got robotics. It's just it's programmed into the oven, The combi oven in many ways is robotic. It cleans itself. You stick a probe in the food, it times itself out. So the combination ovens, and then tying combination ovens into a bigger control system within the kitchen. So you're getting information back. You're getting all your food temperatures. You're getting your cycles. You're getting your maintenance. We continue to say that's sort of a part of the kitchen of the future, is information back, instead of just
So
having
tying
all
it all
this.
together.
Tying it all together makes sense. And then we're starting to see more interesting cooking platforms. Um, Electrolux has been a leader in this. Some of the pressurized braising pans that can do everything, and now Rationale's got a Vario system, and we're seeing manufacturers think a little bit outside the box and move away from that kind of crazy giant 1950s buy one of everything kitchens into something that's more European, and is smaller, more contained, less labor, less radiant heat into the space. That's what we're excited about. It's an
Very cool.
evolution of the kitchen too. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, one last question.
Mhm.
The 500-pound gorilla in the room. So COVID. I mean, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on COVID, and how does it intersect with equipment, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah. In the short term, the absolute best thing that everybody can do is make sure that all of your kitchen ventilation systems are working properly. And when you go to that California Energy Wise site, we've actually got some design guides and also classes. I've been talking about this a lot over the last several months, as you might imagine, and people can stream those classes. But basically, make sure that back of house ventilation system's working, because if you're putting your employees back there, you want good airflow, because that protects them from the virus. It's dilution air. And then the second thing is, you want the kitchen to be a little more comfortable. If you have good airflow, it's not quite so hot and miserable, which means that the staff is going to be more likely to do good mask hygiene. Because if the kitchen's full of smoke, and it's just not, it's miserable, everybody's going to pull their mask down. You have people in tight spaces. So yeah, and then if it's in your front of house, you may be doing off-premises dining. You may have everything may be to go in your front of house, but you still got some staff up there. So the same thing matters. Make sure that all the fans are working, that the filters are clean. It's all about moving air. That's the best thing we can do. There's been a pitch for ultraviolet, but I'm taking the pathway of high caution on that one, because we do not know how the air is going to flow in a restaurant, and whether the UV will actually. We know the UV kills the virus, but we don't know if it kills it in your dining room. And
Hmm.
so I'm being very cautious about that. And then long term, we know there will be more pandemics. It is, how do we build that kitchen of the future that has less, heat, that is more controllable? How do we space our, let's use cook chill, let's use sous vide to space our service out over the course of the day, so we don't have everybody in for a morning prep time, all shoulder to shoulder. It's using some of these techniques for food storage and production, and trying to keep our labor as low as possible indoors. Yeah,
Very interesting.
and my heart goes out to the food service industry. Of all the industries that have been hit by the pandemic, food service is the one that's getting, just slammed the hardest, and it's the
Well,
hardest situation.
yeah, we here in Chicago, they just closed all the restaurants last week.
Yeah,
So you can only imagine the pain, the pain and suffering
yeah.
restaurants right now. I mean, they can do takeout and everything, but that doesn't help your big dining room that sits empty.
Right.
Um, so
That's
it's
right.
tough. So we don't have a lot of time left, but I do have a couple questions here, and I want to be
Okay.
sure that this first one is really interesting, and I'm not sure how you answer this. Oh my goodness, there's a bunch that just came in. Okay, so we may be here for a couple hours. Holy cow.
Okay, good. We can do
All
that.
right. So the first one, let me scroll back up, was,
Mhm.
is there a way to limit food waste, through
Y-
technology and equipment? Is there an intersection there?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing when I talk about performance of equipment and repeatability, the more efficient equipment is cooking faster and it's giving you better control essentially. And if you have better control over your production, then you're going to have less food waste. It gives you and I've got some examples of this. I can give you one really fun example. Induction soup wells. We did some, just the like little soup warmers that sit on a countertop. We did a bunch of research on those guys, and they cut your energy use in half. First off, so it's a good money saver. But they also have a sensor in the bottom. So as my oatmeal is getting, my porridge is getting pulled out of this soup warmer, it's lowering the heat. So I'm not scorching that last, 20% and having to throw it away. So little things like that can make a big difference. And once again, things like, the really controllable half-size rack ovens or combi ovens give you that control. So you're not throwing away so much stuff. High performance equipment has better temperature uniformity. High performance griddles, it's a more uniform surface. So I don't have a cooked pancake and an overcooked pancake and an undercooked pancake. So that feeds in.
Interesting.
And then there's also Lean Path, which is a great way, a technology system for measuring food waste and changing behavior. And that's a great, if you put the efficiency and the Lean Path together, then you're going to really get your food costs down.
Excellent. Couple quick questions here. I thought COVID-19 was a contact virus. How is a good fan helpful in this matter?
COVID-19 is both contact, although the surface contact tends to be the lowest method of transfer right now. That's the thing you worry the least about. And in a commercial kitchen, you guys are great at wiping stuff down and keeping it clean. And just you've dealt with norovirus, you've dealt with salmonella, so commercial kitchens, I don't worry too much about the contact aspect. The other way it's transmitted is people sneezing or coughing. It's droplets in close contact. That's why we wear the mask. But the third way that coronavirus is transmitted is through very small particulate in the air. It's aerosol transmission, and we have proven that it can transmit through aerosol. And that's where having the fans working, having the dilution air makes sense. You're trying to create an indoor environment that looks like you're outside. It's hard to get COVID outside. If you distance a little bit, it's really hard to get it outside. So that's all you're
Okay,
doing.
here we go. Please tell us about oscillating exhaust hoods and the energy they can save you.
By oscillating exhaust hoods, I'm going to guess that the person is talking about demand-controlled kitchen ventilation. And what that is it's a system that measures how much work I'm doing on the on the cook line. If everybody's sauteing, then the hood is running full speed. And if everybody's turned around over here cutting carrots, then the hood goes down to low speed. And the way that and we've done a bunch of case studies on those, and they can cut your energy use in half. That's the that's the score. It turns your fans down, it turns your air conditioning and your heating down, so it's saving you, and the savings are big.
Wonderful.
Is
Okay.
is raw food the solution? I see
Yeah.
that question there. Well, I do love sushi, so that's kind of a loaded question for me, but no, we need to cook. We can cook. There's plenty of energy hitting the earth, and we're in a revolution, an energy revolution. You're going to see, a lot more renewable energy, a lot more storage. There's a huge hydrogen revolution that's coming. I work for a company that does a lot of work up at the top with, gases and electricity and the Department of Energy, and hydrogen is a massive thing that's going to be coming to our planet soon. So
We've been waiting for that for quite a while.
we've been waiting for the hydrogen, yes, and
Yeah,
now
my
it's
father's a physicist. I know all about it.
yeah, the time is here. That's right.
So there was a couple questions that I'm just going to quickly summarize here. One is just, about, I'm really busy, how do I learn about, the equipment and all that. And there was another one about the life expectancy of pieces of equipment in busy kitchens, etc. And I would encourage you to go to the websites that Lynn is going to send out afterwards. Wink, wink to Lynn.
Yeah.
And and take the time to look at that. I will say just a couple quick things before I wrap up. First of all, that many of you on this webcast took part in the sustainability seminar. That 7-part thing that we did. I just want to do a call out here because, as I mentioned when we went through that, when we created that, I reached out to people who are experts because you don't know everything. And Richard was that expert for parts 5 and 6, which was energy and water. So a big shout out to you, Richard, as many. I mean, we did that recently online, and there were about 1,300 chefs from all over the world that did the 7-part series, which was huge. So we couldn't have done that without you. So I want you to know that. And then I will also say, do take the time to look at what they do over at the Food Service Technology Center. I've been there before on one wonderful trip. I mean, just so you know what they do. I was there one time and they were doing, this was so funny, they were doing deep fryer testing. And so there's a poor tech, I guess, who, takes the fries out of the freezer. Everything is measured, everything is timed, sensors everywhere in the oil, and they're just frying batches of frozen French fries over and over and over and over again, and graphing how long how much energy it takes and how quickly the oil comes back up to temperature. And then they would take all the French fries and put them in a garbage can with a bag, which they would then take to a facility for people who lack food, so nothing was wasted. But there's a wonderful photo that I got to find it, Richard, of me salting potato chips in a garbage can or potato chips, French fries, and eating out of the garbage can. But you do such incredible work, and just from the World Chefs community, a million thank yous for getting up early. And for taking part in creating that sustainability seminar that we did, the 7-part series. So you're my hero.
Yeah, well, the feeling is mutual. Yes, absolutely. And I got up early because you cooked for me one time. So you cook for me, and you see what happens. I'll stay up all night, get up early, whatever.
So just real quickly, and Lynn, I believe our next one is in December. We have some holiday time in the United States here, but I believe will be December the 1st. We did take a little time off. I hope a lot of you caught what we did last month on the global presentation, which was so cool with some of the really big thinkers in terms of sustainability and food and the future and all that. But the next one we're going to do is on December 1. And I'm giving you all a sneak peek. You are the first ones to know about this. And that is that we have a 7-part sustainability curriculum. That is until now. And now we have an 8th module. And the 8th module has been under development for about the last, I don't know, 9 months maybe. And it is done. And I will be presenting it to you on December the 1st. So please take some time and join us for that. It is actually a really cool thing, which was pointed out in the Eat Lancet report. We talked about it a bunch before, sort of, and that is that what is good for the planet is good for me personally. And so it's drawing this connection between nutrition and sustainability. And for too many years, nutrition was like over here, whatever. I don't really pay attention to it as a chef, but the reality is that when we think about nutrition, we are at the same time thinking about sustainability. So it's a really, really interesting thing. I hope you can join us. And with that, Richard, a million thank yous. Don't be a stranger, please, to the World Chefs community. You are a huge resource. And to everybody who has joined us from all over the world, thank you, as always. Have a great day,
Thanks so
everybody,
much.
or good night. Go to sleep. But you in Australia, go to sleep.
Yeah.
Take care. Thanks, everybody. And thank you to Lynn, as always. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.